Alrighty, here we go. Let's try to make this tenon smaller in diameter, but not uniformly. Remember, it's now conical by a fair amount. This is actually larger at the end here than it is up against the body of the stem. That's typically the result you get whenever you do the heat it and push thing. It'll bulge it kind of a mushroom shape. If you look really carefully, you can see that the bottom edge of this is curved as well. This has been bent over just a little bit, but I think we can get this squared away using just sandpaper and not have to get into heavy-duty tool usage. Now, usually 600 grit is what I use for this. Rarely I'll go down to 400, and we'll finish it off with some 1,000 or 1,200. And do not pinch this like so, like grip it. All you'll do is make it into an hourglass shape. You want to wrap it around, align the bottom edge of the paper. This is the straight edge here that you've scissored off. And then you pinch it together, and it takes a second to get it started. There we go. And using dwell time, meaning it's crawling its way in and out in a pumping action. See the gap there between the paper and the base of the stem? Let that go out to about halfway, and then back to the bottom and back up again. And what's happening is, even though you're keeping the tension uniform, you're removing more material at the end because you're spending more time there. You're dwelling in that location longer. If you've seen how on the old bait casting fishing reels, how the line, the widget that keeps the line from building up in one spot, how it hovers over the edges or blips over the edges and then hovers over the center and blips again. That's dwell time being exploited for the purposes of getting the line on there evenly. Didn't explain that very well, but you get the idea. Okay, now this is starting to go in. It's still way too tight. I wouldn't force that, but you can see some shine on there now from where we were. Now you get a feel for what is too tight and what's not pretty quickly. The paper is lit right up, so move down to a fresh chunk of it here. Same thing I did before, and maybe about the same amount. It seemed like it was around 20 turns. Now I encourage you, if you have a dial indicator, to use that early on. Now I've done this so much that I can tell you by pressure and how many twists about how many thousandths are coming off, of material, but takes a bit of practice to get there. In the meantime, you should be able to determine that, or you can determine that with great accuracy just by using one of these guys. And it's looking like we're down at exactly 154 on the end, and before we had 152 or 3 at the base. So we're about 1,000th bigger at the end than we started. I'm sorry, we were 5 thousandths oversized to begin with, and now we're down to pretty good fit, actually. not too bad. And I'll check straightness. Boy, it's our lucky day. We've got a light, tight fit. Everything is square. And that squeakiness, we can get rid of that by just touching it up against a wax wheel. I'm going to finish this with a couple of turns of 1200 grit. Very light pressure. And we can or not, depending on your confidence level, square up the end of the tenon that has been mashed at an angle. The fit is outstanding actually with it there, but my OCD demands that be squared off, so I think I'll do that and show you how as well. So there we go. Had you try now, notice that the shine is not everywhere equally. I'm hoping you can see this fairly well. See how the shine is not evenly distributed? That means it's still not cylindrical in the ideal sense. And the only way we're going to get that to happen and still achieve a good fit would be to expand the tenon uniformly and then reduce its diameter again. And that's overkill. I think the owner of the pipe just wants to get it back in serviceable condition and with a good fit, and that's where we are. The fact that we don't have complete contact at a microscopic level, I don't think is really going to make much difference. If you're going to cut the end of this off, I would recommend, rather than do it by eye at first until you get the hang of it, would be to take a piece of tape, and pretty much any kind of tape will work. You're just going to use it as a marker. And trying to do things on the camera here is a bit of a pain. Don't have the long bladed scissors here. No fair laughing. Okay. Find the low spot, align the tape right up to the edge of the low spot, the low side. And without stretching it more than necessary to keep the thing level, go around it like so. And then step up to a disc sander and give it a touch and check, and then maybe touch it again and check and touch it again. Be very, very discreet, or not discreet, gentle, and sneak up on your goal. Don't just crank it in there. You're likely to take off too much material. But use a guide until you get the knack for getting things square when you're pushing against them in this fashion here. So I'm going to turn off the camera, go square this off, and put a little wax on the tenon, and be back in a minute. And that may be the end of the show here. We got lucky.